I want to begin by explaining a couple things about these calls. I chose to do them in the morning because when you set your day in rhythm, you feel the effect the whole day long. You will hear rhythm patterns in your life more, and you will also tune your own beat, your own rhythm. It's about your personal practice. Some of you teach, some of you lead circles, some of you have drum stores. This is personal practice time. So many times we teach drumming or we facilitate or we lead healing circles for people or energy medicine, and we don't do it for ourselves. Anybody relate to that? So this is a time for you. And secondly, for those of you who are working in settings where you teach drumming for healing, I'm happy for you to use this material I'm teaching you. Just please honor the source of that, and I as well want to honor the source of much of this comes through my studies with Uncle Manny, Eagle Elk Council Pipe Sandoval, and my experience with Lakota drumming, my experience in the science of drumming with Dr. Michael Todd at Colorado State University, and my years and years of experience doing drum circles with lots of people, Lane Redmond, Marla Lee Goldstein, Arthur Hull, learning drumming. For about 10 years of my life, I did nothing but study world drumming. I was addicted. So all those great teachers I want to take a moment and acknowledge. So let's take a breath. Today's theme is finding your groove. And groove means the entrainment. Entrainment means effortless. Finding a pulse, a beat that feels like putting on a warm sweater. It just is you. It's a mirror that we get to look into ourselves. It's a practice. I like to approach the drum with this practice with a lot of curiosity and wonder, no expectations. This is very different than practicing patterns. It's great. A lot of us study Middle Eastern, African drumming. This is not that. This is studying an inner soul rhythm that comes through and you're giving it time to speak, really, and the way we're going to prepare. So let's begin to practice the preparation. Before we do, I would just recommend get your recording device ready because you're all muted so that you can all experience this practice simultaneously. I have been teaching on Zoom for 8 years, so I'm really familiar with this platform and I really love it because it allows you and me to gather. And none of us had to get on airplanes. Yay! Reduces a lot of fuel costs. So the first step, and you can see it in your handout, is the preparation. We're going to do this consistently for the next 4 days. Let's begin with get your drum, whatever drum you use. I have body drums, goblet drums. I have my doumbek as well. This practice I'm going to teach you works for all kinds of drums. I prefer to teach it to you on my frame drum because it fits the screen. People always like, why did you use that drum? I'm like, it looked good on the screen. It fits. It's probably not even the size I usually use, a 16-inch, but this is a 14-inch. So take a breath. The drum is not a breath instrument. We frequently have to remind ourselves to take that breath. Hand on heart. This is where we begin our practice the next 5 days, the inner drum. Take a breath and connect to your inner drum. The center of love inside you, the rhythm that's always beating. And then when you're ready, place it on your drum with an open, sweeping hand in gratitude. We begin with gratitude. So I'm connecting my hand, my heart, my inner drum to my outer drum. When I studied with Uncle Manny, he would sometimes put his hand on his heart and then brush the drum. Like, I'm going to listen. He loves that. So while you're doing this blessing to your drums, I'm going to read you a poem I wrote last night to dedicate to you all. It's called Finding Your Groove. Where can you go to find what awaits within? Why question the very pulse that beats in your body? Incubated in rhythm, born into a world of pulsating patterns you danced and played without judgment, good or bad. And now you return to the practice of drumming for health and healing and living in creative flow. Your drum called you here, offered itself to birth and rebirth you back to beauty. Ashe. So now we've prepared, we're ready. The practice we're going to begin with is to, without thinking, put your hand on the drum and see what appears. This is like doodling, okay? You're going to doodle. Nobody can hear you. You can hear yourself if you're recording yourself. Nobody can hear you, but I want you to doodle a little. And I'm holding space for this moment, just finding some patterns, play around. This is your moment. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to skin on skin, connect, play what resonates with you. Are you feeling fast? Are you feeling slow? Which sounds are you finding as you explore? Feel free to move, even rocking. I find rocking really feels good while I drum. This is an embodied practice. We can use our voice, our body. You can close your eyes. Let's continue for one more minute. And bring your pattern to a close. Give yourself a rumble. So now I'm going to spend a bit of time giving you some rhythm vocabulary expansion, and then we're going to return to that same practice to close the call. And I think what you'll find is in these things I'm going to teach you today, it's like a pre and post test. When you return to that practice, you'll notice the difference. So it's a fun way to continue to grow in how we speak from our soul through the drum. One thing that I love about this practice is beginning with this aesthetic, honoring the drum, connecting, and then I begin, and then I asked you to notice how you closed. There's a few different ways I like to end a pattern. Fade out, right? Slow down, rumble. And then I really like to bring all that energy back to my heart. So I end how I began. So I feel the circle, the arc of this practice. So bring your hand back from the experience of drumming. All that you played with the drum you now receive. So let's do some rhythm. I call this number 3, expanding your rhythmic vocabulary. Because rhythmic practice is patterns, right? We're finding a pattern and repeating it, and that's the beauty of this work. Not work, play. So the first one is, I'm going to show you the difference between this 2 different meters. Some will call this feminine and masculine, or hips and steps, because 4/4 tends to be a stepping rhythm, or 2/4, and I studied this in my entrainment work for my master's degree in music therapy with Dr. Michael Taut's lab, and hips tends to be 6/8. So hips and steps, it's a way to think of it. First, I'll demonstrate the 4/4. The more masculine it's considered, this is pretty much all the Western music we listen to. The Americans, we all, probably Canadians, even Scottish people may be the same, but we have a lot of 4/4. 1, 2, 3. You can join me in this pattern, just feeling into that stepping, tapping your foot with it. My 4/4. I'm stepping. This is the basis of samba, a parade. Forward motion. And let's fade it out into a rumble. Take a breath. Six, 8, hips. Hard to even sit still when I play this. It's like skipping. It's like laughing. Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Rocking. Notice how that feels in your body. Bring it to an end. And take a breath. Take a moment and reflect on those two different grooves. Was there one that resonated more than the other for you? So that's the meter. Now I'm really excited to explore straight and syncopation. So these are like the polarities of growing our vocabulary. So straight pulse, we're just going to have like doom, 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 right? Syncopation is the beats, the drum strokes that happen in between the pulse. Tak, 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 doom, doom, tak, 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 doom, doom. So I'm combining something that's syncopated and something straight. But let me create a practice pattern for us today. Maybe 4 beats straight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da, 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 da. 1, 2. There's a straight. Here's the syncopation. Da, 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 da. that straight pulse, and then the contrast of the syncopation. Feel into those opposites. And bringing it to an ending, you can hear how this one just wants to go bum, 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 bum. Right? So endings, you know, endings can be different in different kinds of ways that we run these patterns. That ending just seems so perfectly natural to end on the up. So we're now going to take a second and reflect. How did you feel? Did you feel those contrasts of the straight beat and the syncopation beat and the way they talk to each other, right? The way they set up space for each other. Someone once was showing me clave, which is a very universal pattern all over the world. People love clave. People play clave. Dot, tak, tak, doom, doom. Tak, 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 doom, doom. Here's a syncopation. Here's the straight. Pretty cool. So we've reviewed meter, the groove of step and hip. We've reviewed syncopation and straight. There's two more. Let's review, or let's tag in with, let's touch base with the different tones, the sounds. I mean, one thing I can tell you, I've done a lot of this kind of meditative drumming where I literally don't talk for 2 hours and just drum. And in that time, I've really found this huge beauty, the contrast between the doom and the talk, or the bass and the tone, depending on the kind of drum you're using. It's like a world. And it's funny because I studied piano. I don't know if any of you studied other instruments, but when I came to the drum, I was like, what a relief, 2 notes. There's a lot more, of course, but it did feel like a relief. And now I'm finding that like it's very zen to have less sounds. And that just shifting which tones I use on a pattern completely changes its energy for me. Here's a quick example. So if I'm doing clave, tak, 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 tak. Now if I reverse the sounds and I go low before high, whole different song. Unbelievable. You can take any simple pattern that comes from your soul when you do this practice of hand on drum go, right? Preparation, hand on drum go. And when you notice that pattern, you might just hit that little boredom spot a minute or two in. Just change one of the sounds. Just that little flick on a tone completely interestingly changes it. And I left you guys a video for that whole bass, earth, water, air, fire, so that you have some vocabulary to play with. So now let's go, and you can practice that as we play, that you can take any pattern. Well, let's actually do that together. You can take a pattern. Let's do the one I began the day with, because it was my soul pattern. Doom, doom, talk, 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 doom, doom, talk, 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 doom, doom, talk, 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 doom. Now let's reverse that. So I go talk, talk, See how they talk to each other? No pun intended. They talk to each other. Take a breath. Don't forget to breathe. Another variation. Closed, closed, open, open, closed, closed. All the same pattern, different sounds. Let's say I need more grounding. I'm going to do the whole thing in the bass. Ooh, I like that. See, that resonates with me. You know what you love. You know what resonates with you, right? Let's find an ending. Take a breath. So the last component we're going to explore in finding your groove is the tempo changes. And I mentioned this, the tempo changes of life and music. Because I feel like if there's one metaphor that applies from drumming to life and music in general, it's this feeling of like, yeah, there's stable patterns and syncopated patterns, right? But there's also the speeding up and slowing down, the tempo changes. That happens all day long, you know, and I find that when I meditate, that's a real tempo change. I dig it. I need it. I need to slow down. I've noticed in my life, the more stuff I do, the more I need to meditate. So as we learn that in drumming, we can take a pulse that feels like your soul pattern today, finding your groove, and speed it up to where it's comfortable, and even where it's uncomfortable. Push a little bit your edge and come back to that initial rhythm, beat, tempo, I should say. And then knowing that as I practice that, I'm practicing that in life always. I'm building my comfort. I'm building my capacity to adapt, to shift into different gears without it being fight or flight. And I just went to a phenomenal lecture on epigenetics and the whole adrenal fatigue that's happening in our culture today because we're so used to fight or flight, panic. Oh no, what's happening with the news? Oh no, what's happening with Trump? Oh no, what's happening in the weather? You know, and there's this sort of exhaustion. So what we're doing is we're building our capacity to flow between rhythms. Does that make sense? You can nod. I'm looking at everybody. Does that make sense? Can anyone relate to this? Okay, good. Good. So we'll just take this pattern that became the opening pattern, because I wasn't thinking, I jumped fast enough to just play. Like the beauty shows up when we're not trying. You guys were coming on the call and I was just playing to welcome you and I went, oh, that's a great pattern. That's my favorite. Curiosity, wonder, surprise, and doodling. The 4 keys to that. So let's take this pattern that we began with. Doom, doom, taka, doom, doom, taka. And what happens if I speed up? I feel excitement. I feel a little challenged. Relax my hands, relax. You can always play faster if you're more relaxed. Especially in my shoulders. Relax. Can this go a little faster? pattern change, but so what? Back to the slow. I hear the pattern differently because I sped it up. Like, it's interesting. It's going to be a different sound when we speed it up, right? A different energy. So take a breath. Let's do that practice together. We'll take this pattern, we'll speed it up twice, and then we'll come back to the original tempo. And then we'll close with a final improv practice. You guys are doing great for this early morning call. Take a breath. Modulating tempos in music and in life. Here we go, speeding it up. Hard to hold still. Here we go, speeding it up. Finding an ending. Take a breath. So now that you have explored this rhythm vocabulary today, I've thrown 4 different kind of components to you: the step and the hip, the tempo changes, the syncopation and the straight, and the different sounds you can play with. Now, let's do a post-test. And the other thing about finding your groove is don't give up on yourself in 2 minutes. You know, I focus group tested people. It took people 4 minutes to really entrain with the groove. These were non-drummers that I studied. So in 3 minutes, I saw their breath change. And in 4 minutes in, I saw they had entrained with the rhythm. And you know what? Most people pick up a drum, they try a pattern, and they can't get it in 2 minutes, and they put it down. So give yourself some patience. Finding your groove requires a commitment of some time. So with your recording device, if you choose to record yourself now so that you have a record of this pattern, let's close today's call by doing this practice. I'm going to hold space for you for 10 minutes. I want you to take some time with this. Move, rock, be with your drum. Know that there's 28 people. There's going to be 50 people listening to the call. I kept getting people begging me to join the class, and I finally said, all right, we're going to 40 tickets. And then I had another 10 people begging me, so we're 50 people. So we're 28 people on this call. 28 people are holding space with you for this practice this morning. Finding your groove. Practice what we did, beginning with the honoring. This is how drumming becomes a spiritual practice, a personal healing practice. Begin with hand on heart. Breathe. Connect to your inner drummer. Put your hand on your open, sweeping hand on your drum and give gratitude. And then be amazed. Explore your patterns. Find your groove today. Go.